Welcome one, welcome all. We're live on BerryFlow Upstream number 58. This one is entitled AtHoc to honor the recent acquisition BlackBerry made for the real-time crisis management and communications platform. I'm here today with editor at Crackberry, Miss DJ Reyes. How are you doing, DJ?
Hello, good evening.
I appreciate you coming out because I know it's so late or rather early over there in the UK, so I do appreciate
It's
you
just
coming
gone
out.
1 a.m.
Turning to 1 a.m., that's crazy.
No, it's gone 1 a.m. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, late.
Well, we have Crackberry's editor-in-chief, Lays. How you doing, man?
Can't complain. Back home now. Enjoying
I
Nova
like
Scotia crappy weather.
I think you're being facetious there. You got your motivation and everything on, too. I like that. As well, we have two developers with us. Brandon Orr was also an editor at BerryFlow. How you doing, Brandon?
Pretty good. Been busy for the past month or so, so sorry I haven't been on as much, but glad to be back today.
It's cool to see your new kind of backdrop. You're actually in your room instead of like crashing in your basement where your DJ studio is.
Yeah, exactly.
Your backdrop reminds me of one of those old T-Mobile wallpapers that they used to put on phones.
Yeah. It's kind of like a nightclub or something, I guess.
In his usual backdrop, we have Alex. How you doing, Alex?
I'm good. It's nice to see that haircut, James, that everyone's just ignoring. He literally has no hair.
I wanted to see if anyone would be like, "Hey, dude, what happened here? Where did
Some
that go?"
feels different, yeah.
It feels a little lighter, a little bit more airy, so I guess that's a good thing. No, it's hot. It's summer. Like over here, it's Florida. It's just too hot, so I had to give myself some room to breathe up top. Otherwise, I'm gonna like maybe bake my brain and can't do these reoccurring podcasts on the weekly. So I believe back on the 23rd, last Thursday, we had a security summit from BlackBerry. Chris was actually there, live in attendance. Chris, give us some feedback. Give us a little recap. How was it for you? Did you stay awake through all of it?
Well, I mean, going into it, it was rather questionable as to whether or not BlackBerry would take the opportunity to go ahead and make some new announcements in regards to any devices or anything like that. I mean, with all the rumors, the Android rumors, and the slider being out there and stuff like that. So at that point, a lot of us probably expected something to be said about those sorts of things, but realistically, none of that happened. They kept it exactly as it was supposed to be, and as they led everybody to believe. It was a security summit. That's exactly what they focused on. They never strayed into any device talk or anything like that, unless they were essentially forced to by the media. They covered the AtHoc acquisition, which we'll get into a little bit later, of course. They covered basically their whole security roadmap, and I don't know, it basically laid out to exactly what they said it would be. A BlackBerry security summit. They focused on security, what they're doing in security, gave us a demo of how an IV pump could actually be hacked from the outside, and they kept it straight and narrow with the security focus. And I mean, that, as mostly everybody knows, that BlackBerry has always relied on security, and they really hammered that home this time around, I think, in terms of getting the actual message out there that they're really concerned with the whole security aspect of things. The main takeaway is, at this point, I think it's safe to say that BlackBerry is really loading up on their security background. They're adding to it, and I don't think anybody at this point could say, security isn't a top priority for BlackBerry at this point in time. It's one of the key things that they're focusing on, and they're going to continue to hammer out acquisitions and everything like that lean toward that security aspect. They have a serious cache of security features that are basically being rolled out, and I don't think anybody else can compare to what they're doing in regards to security at this point in time. Like, not Apple, not Google, or anything. That's just their straight up key focus for security.
Yeah, I think it was smart that they for instance did that demonstration, showing that that you can hack that, because security is something that is very difficult to be seen. It's something that people don't think about. And even when, say, Target gets scammed or hacked for tens of millions of credit card numbers and things, normally if your credit card number was taken in the hack, your credit card, it's kind of like a little bit of a pain in the butt. The credit card company normally figures it out, and you don't end up losing money at the end of the day. It's a minor inconvenience. And when you kind of attribute it to life and death, it's a little bit easier to take it more seriously, I think. The fact that you could just be getting, hospitalized and just trying to recover, and someone can literally hack and kill you, and they can be on the other side of the world, for instance. Like, that's a scary thing. And I think that's just, it's smart. One of the things, like bringing in, emotions into security, I think it's just a really smart thing. And it's something they have to do, I think, for people to just take it seriously.
Yeah, one of the other things I read from the security summit is that BlackBerry was really pushing that they're a platform, an OS agnostic platform. And one of the journalists that wrote about the summit said was that there was actually more Android and iPhone devices there, just to really reinforce the fact that like BlackBerry is no longer, just the BlackBerry devices. They have a lot of services, security, and otherwise that go cross-platform now, and I thought that was another interesting point that was brought up about the summit as well.
Yeah, and it's a very realistic point as well, because even though they had all the demos and stuff like that were set up for watchdogs and AtHoc and stuff, everything normally in previous events you would go to, and you wouldn't necessarily see a Samsung Galaxy S6 sitting next to a BlackBerry or an iPhone sitting next to a BlackBerry. But this time around, pretty much every demo station had different devices that were capable of these services being enabled on them. Watch Dogs had the S6 sitting out, and the demonstration for the Bez had an iOS device there and a Samsung device there. Pretty much every station had multiple devices to show off these demos and show how each one worked on those individual devices themselves. So, BlackBerry has changed. They're device agnostic now, and it doesn't matter what you're running. If they can go ahead and get the services on there, they're going to do it.
I thought it was pretty interesting, and I want to get DJ's input on it, because we all seem to have taken something different from the security summit. DJ, on your end, did you happen to replay or watch it while it was live, and what did you take away from the actual security summit?
So I didn't watch it live. I watched it later in the day. Like everyone else, the hack was very interesting to see. That demo was a key part, I think, of the whole conference being, about security. They're obviously the acquisition. They're making acquisitions that make sense. They want to be on all devices, and they want to just branch out that security and get to everywhere.
I think it's a good point. As they look to branch out, like you mentioned, they're kind of going odd places. Like the AtHoc acquisition for me was kind of like filling a hole, right? Like real-time crisis communication is something BlackBerry didn't have as part of their platform. So as you said, as they're branching out, they're kind of filling in every aspect of what their platform may need. So there's a really good point there. What about this UK government guidance? We saw that basically they've updated some of their security guidelines and working to deploy both BES 12 and BlackBerry 10.3.1 and above. What do you guys think about a certification like this? I know Brandon spoke on it a little earlier, and he was like, yeah, they're talking to people, right? They're getting things through the door, but I think it's important for them to be focusing on those key demographics, right? Because security is going to be this mounting thing.
Well, I could be wrong about this UK government guidance, but I thought it was kind of just an update to an existing kind of set of guidelines for security within government departments. And so I think it was just kind of an update to the previous guidelines that was oriented around 10.2. OS, and this
Yeah.
is just an update for 10.3. So I mean, it's nice to see that they're updating and keeping it fresh in terms of that. But to me personally, I thought it was just another reinforcement that they are trusted by the UK government. They are in that space. But on the other side, it's kind of like, you know, this is what they've been doing all along. It's not anything new.
Yeah, it's not anything brand new. They were already certified. It's just a re-update of the actual certification that was already in place. And you know, that's not trying to downplay the significance of it, because it is absolutely important that they maintain that stuff. But it's, you know, it already existed. It's just a reiteration for the new operating system that yes, the UK government can use it in those situations. And you know, they offer the exact same thing. Like Samsung Knox got certified, and they do it, I think, pretty much on a yearly basis. They go through all the smartphone operating systems and determine whether or not they can actually be used within the UK government, and for basically work and personal circumstances. They just offer that guidance on how IT administrators can essentially set up these devices to be in those areas of work and personal use, so that everybody knows, like, yes, you can use this. And, you know, it gives guidance on how to go about setting it up so that it is secure in the most appropriate manner for that position. So it's just an update to it.
There were some new security features that came with the 10.3.1 OS upgrade in particular. So it's good at least that they're being able to look through and certify those new features as well as they grow with kind of the whole certification process. So we saw the BlackBerry guidance. Let's dig in on this acquisition. DJ, what are some of your thoughts on the AtHoc acquisition? Do you think it's going to be a value add for them? Do you see them kind of bundling this service with something like Bez? Or do you think it's going to be more of a standalone play? Me personally, when I was looking at it, I just saw a bunch of customers that BlackBerry probably wants, right? Or wants to recommit them to sell them stuff with. What were your thoughts?
That's exactly it. The companies that AtHoc, you know, are clients of AtHoc, that they're huge. It's definitely, obviously, BlackBerry trying to reach those customers. So you know, the technology as well as the customers, I think.
And Blaze, what about you, man? Do you think this is going to be something that BlackBerry can really like get sustainable revenue recurring from, or do you feel like it's just like a hole for them to fill in the overall platform and offering?
I don't know. I think they can eventually make some revenue from it, of course, because, as you know, governments spend lots and lots of money on lots of different things. They just blow money the way that they can. But I mean, I think one way to look at the AtHoc situation, and I was talking with Douglas from Mobile Syrup, who actually used to work at BlackBerry previously. But if you guys remember, like 9/11 and stuff like that, BlackBerry had essentially they built the scenario during 9/11 where they were one of the only services at that point in time that actually worked. Like, people were trying to communicate, the cell phone towers were down, stuff like that, and it didn't actually work. You know, the other services, the other provider services didn't actually work. BlackBerry was one of the ones that worked during that time. So that sort of gave them the credibility and the, I guess, the reputation as being a service which works in those crisis scenarios, right? But essentially, that service that was available at that point in time it technically no longer exists. Like, if heaven forbid 9/11 were to happen again today, that infrastructure is essentially gone now. Like, they can't rely on that exact same infrastructure anymore because it's gone. It's no longer in place. Where they already have that reputation of being capable of handling these situations in crisis management and such, they sort of needed something to go ahead and replace it and keep it going. Like, they have that reputation. They needed something to go ahead and continue that reputation, and AtHoc is sort of that thing that actually replaces it. It comes down to how they're actually going to integrate it. I believe John Chen said that, you know, they're going to integrate it directly into BBM and stuff like that, which would be absolutely amazing, because, you know, they're already on Android, they're already on iOS. I seen that when the acquisition was announced, a lot of people were saying, well, there's no BlackBerry 10 app. Well, that's kind of the point. Like, there doesn't necessarily need to be a BlackBerry 10 app because BBM is going to be the BlackBerry 10 app. They're going to integrate it, and hopefully they'll turn some profit on the actual acquisition. And again, governments like to spend money on those things. And the other side of the AtHoc thing is that it's a great acquisition, and you can sell people on the idea that you need this stuff, but it at the end of the day, it's one of those services that you kind of hope that you don't ever actually have to use. Like when you want it to be there, you want it to work, but realistically, you don't want it. You don't want to actually have to use it, because that means that you're in a crisis situation, and there could be lives at risk at that point in time. So I don't know. It's definitely a good acquisition to have, and good to have them added to their portfolio. And I think it's one of those things that will eventually turn a profit for them. And if nothing else, it made the media essentially look at BlackBerry in a different aspect as well, because it hammered home that security aspect once again, because that was the AtHoc acquisition was something that I don't think anybody even thought of or even saw coming. So
right, it's hard to see a synergy there. It's definitely going to do well for them, I think. And it seems like they also kind of want to AtHoc, maybe, it just kind of seems like it was a perfect thing, right? Maybe not that one approached the other, but it just kind of was a natural marriage. As BlackBerry looks to try to expand their global footprint, so does AtHoc, right? Most of the customers we saw were in North America, were in the U.S. They're expanding into Canada, they're expanding into Australia, areas where BlackBerry has a good enterprise footing. So again, it just kind of makes sense to help everybody expand their business practices. What about you, Brandon? What are some of your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, some of you might know I've been working for the Toronto Pan Am Games, and what I've noticed a lot through events and other areas that require security is that there's also a very vital aspect that requires the dissemination of information that's related to security threats. And so AtHoc here, this acquisition plays really well with BlackBerry because they have the security aspect of it already, but now they have another aspect, kind of a communication aspect, where they can disseminate messages and alerts to people depending on security threats. That can range from traffic alerts, that can range from a whole multitude of different types of alerts, and that's what I gathered AtHoc it does primarily. I don't know if any of you can maybe educate me a bit more on what it does. I've been trying to find information on it. That's what I've kind of found.
It seems like they do have some kind of integration within their secure communication systems into things like fire alarms and other sensors. So again, can BlackBerry add a value to that with maybe their IP and patent portfolio? Who knows, right? They have a key aspect of this in the automotive and healthcare sector, where real-time alerts can be very, very beneficial, right? So there could be a real-time alert every time you hit a pothole, and it goes and communicates out to a different system, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe a piece of medical equipment's failing and it needs an update or something like that, right? So there seems to be some kind of proposition as part of their overall cohesion of their platform that they're going to be able to bring this together in an interesting way. Alex, what were some of your thoughts on it, man? Do you think this is going to be a good move for BlackBerry? And if it's not, what's something you'd like to see them focus on in the enterprise space? Because really, they've almost got everything covered at this point.
Yeah, honestly, I guess personally, you could kind of see some things that they're going to do with it, but it's more so seeing how the media is reenacting to it, and it seems to be fairly positive. So if the media is happy with it, then I'm happy with it. They could use any good media possible. And in terms of what they can do, I don't really know. I mean, for enterprise, I really think it would be nice to get Blend cross-platform and start really, building security in with communication. And I don't know though. It's kind of like we're just waiting at this point to see what they choose to do. I don't know. I kind of it's becoming more and more difficult to really see what BlackBerry's plans are the longer we go. We're kind of right before
they have an exclusive Verizon superphone coming just for you, Alex.
You know what? I hear that's in the works. So.
And it runs what's Brandon's favorite operating system?
iOS, Android,
Tizen.
Tizen. Yeah.
Tizen.
Tizen. Yeah.
So we had a little bit of discussion here about the AtHoc acquisition. As well, we saw some new approvals for BlackBerry at the DoD. What do you guys think? Again, this kind of falls in line with the same security guidelines, right? They have DoD approvals already, but now what it seems they're going to be able to do is use the actual BlackBerry smartphone as a key card to access different areas of like the business, which I think is super cool. It's going to save them some money. What did you guys think about the latest DoD approval? Did you guys read up on it?
Didn't actually sit down and read through it. I mean, it's like you said, it follows along the same lines as the UK guideline update. It's just basically another another notch in their security belt, basically for the DoD to go ahead and use BlackBerry devices should they decide to. Unfortunately, it doesn't necessarily on our end, we don't get to see whether or not the DoD is actually out there purchasing those devices or anything like that. But it comes down to the fact that if they do want to go ahead and purchase it, at least they're certified for it. And if they do go ahead and buy any and put them into their channels for their users, right? The DoD, the thing with the DoD is like
they approve everything.
Yeah, I mean, they test everything, they use everything, and as I'm sure all of us here know, like we've all read the headlines that, you know, the U.S. Navy or whatever, the U.S. Air Force or whatever is moving away from BlackBerry devices, all those dramatic headlines. But the thing is that the DoD is so expansive, each department could have their own sort of guidelines and rules for as to which devices that they can use. You know, there is standards. I don't want to say that there's not set standards because there realistically is. I mean, that's the whole basis of the DoD. But when you read those headlines and stuff like that about the DoD switching from BlackBerry to iOS or from Android or whatever, you know, that you don't really get a broad aspect of which department of the DoD that is. It's one thing to say it's the U.S. Air Force or whatever, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the whole damn Air Force is going to switch off of BlackBerry devices. It could just be, you know, 100 users in one section of the United States Air Force that has been switched off, whatever. And you know, the DoD is very broad when it comes to the devices that they use and stuff like that. And I think all those headlines are overly dramatic, so you can't really judge those headlines. And to say that the DoD is moving away from BlackBerry devices isn't necessarily true, because it could just be a few departments that are moving away from it. So at least now they have the approvals, they have the new guidelines that are in place, and you know there's still going to be certain portions of the DoD that are actually out there using those BlackBerry devices because it is secure for their environment, right?
It's interesting that in the actual write-up for it, it mentions credentials for BlackBerry OS and BlackBerry 10. So as you said, as there's so many different layers to the DoD, wherever those BlackBerry devices are, they have the potential to be used as a key card into different regions of the business. So I think it's kind of cool, at least for their unclassified networks, that they have that kind of access. I have to carry a badge, and I hate when I leave it at home. I never leave my phone at home, you know? So it is a convenience thing, and it probably cuts down on some costs thereabout as well. So we'll move on from that, because there really wasn't too much to say on it. But let's talk about Dallas passing through the FCC. Do you really think this is something we're going to see in North America, maybe even in the UK, or is it really going to be something that's focused over in some of those emerging markets? What about you, DJ? Do you like the BlackBerry Dallas device? Is it something you're interested in, or not really, from a design perspective?
No, I mean, the rumor is that it's more or less the same specs as the Passport, right? The normal one. So I don't see it coming here. It's very hard to get devices here anyway on the networks. But I like the way that the original Passport looks like. So I don't know. It's probably just going to be emerging markets, maybe.
I'm not too interested in it myself. It looks kind of just broken down, right? We've seen the original passport in all its glory, and all these iterations, these new ones, just
Yeah.
they all like are less than, in my opinion. But
Yeah, it just looks like the
Yeah.
AT&T passport, except a little bit
Yeah.
higher build quality. At least from the picture, it looks like it's more
It
metal
looks
than it is
much
plastic.
better in person, though. I mean, I began with saying that a passport's a passport, and it doesn't look really that appealing. But John Chen and Marty Beard were using them, and I saw them up nice and close. I didn't get to hold it or anything, but like I was close enough to see it in person and be like, maybe I need one of those just to add to the collection.
But Chris, do you like the way it feels compared to? I mean, you have the AT&T one. I mean, which one do you prefer?
I haven't had any hands-on time with it, so I don't know. It's hard. All I can say is that it looks better, at least visually in person, than it does in the pictures. Which, most cases that's usually the scenario, anyways. Because when the passport first started,
the original,
people hated it, and now it's like one of the most beloved devices that BlackBerry has put out. So.
Yeah, I guess what's more comfortable, the AT&T version or the original? And you could probably say, the Dallas is going to probably feel more like the AT&T version. I don't know. I haven't used the AT&T version, so I don't know.
I just wish they'd hurry up and announce it because, quite honestly, I'm kind of tired of talking about it.
That's very true.
Out there, I mean, when your CEOs are like not
using it in public,
to hide the fact that it exists, then where the hell is it? Like, at this point, I'm starting to wonder if we're even ever actually going to see it, or if it's just like something that they produced internally and now they have to like file off the records for it.
Yeah.
There's no sign of it actually being released anywhere as of yet, which is kind of weird because it's sitting at the FCC. It's certified for Malaysia and Indonesia and Singapore. So where the hell is it? Why does this
find it, Chris? Find it for us. The one Dallas device that there may be out there. I mean, if it sells the device, it sells the device, and BlackBerry needs to make money. So my thing is, like, you put a device out. Is it going to run BlackBerry 10? Is it going to run Android? And then why? Like, why would you put that out and then like bring a slider device right afterwards? Or depending on how you roll out a device like that. I'm with Chris. It just feels kind of like misplaced at this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Maybe it's just part of the old kind of paradigm of releasing certain devices and things, and they're obviously gonna how much time goes into going just through the process to bring a phone to market, and you're talking about changing the phone around a little bit. I understand the AT&T one, they kind of forced them to do it, but this is essentially a passport. If it's going to be similar specs to a passport, why go through all of this work to even get it to go to market and just deal with all of this? So I feel like all of this is just going to slow down. We're not going to see as much of this going on.
Well, didn't John Chen just say that they're basically just going to come up with like 1 or 2 devices per year? So if that's the case, and this takes up one of those slots.
Yeah, which hopefully he means starting the year or something. I find it kind of weird. Did anyone else find it weird that he kind of just randomly said in the middle of an interview and that was the first time really hearing about 1 to 2 devices? I felt like it kind of came out of nowhere that he brought it up, and obviously we may have seen it coming, but I feel like it was kind of a strange way to. Chris, what do you think?
I don't know. It was one of those things that I agree. It absolutely sort of came up out of the middle of nowhere, and he just kind of randomly said it. Honestly, I don't place too much thought into what he actually says in terms of the reducing devices. I mean, it sounds like they have to reduced devices at some point in time, but it just seems like, I don't know, it was all too random.
Yeah.
It's probably like an obvious thing that they've been leading toward for a while, right? I mean, you put the Leap out, you put all these devices out, even Classic and Passport. You put marketing in a very key demographic. You put it to specific user groups, but you don't put else much behind it. And we've seen the earnings calls come through. We've seen how many devices and what volume they're actually selling at, about 1 million a quarter for 4 a year. So it just makes sense to cut down that focus and focus on like 2 or 3 maybe really, really good devices, or go the Dallas route and maybe you build for the different regions, right, and give them a region-specific device. Regardless, as they really focus on like the Internet of Things and focus on obviously the IoT platform that they have, I think there's a lot more they can bring to the table in terms of an experience outside of devices, because the devices at this point are just not selling. Brandon's trashing the Dallas here in our group chat, man. Tell us how you feel, Brandon.
Let's be honest, it sucks. Like, it's just like whatever. Like, everybody just wants the slider. Just come up with the slider. Just release the slider. Like, that's all you have to do to make like the fans you have happy. Just do that. Don't do this other stuff.
Just put the Passport specification in a Leap. I mean,
I don't even know if the slider is going to make everybody happy though, because there's those people that want just a flat out full touch device.
Okay, but this is the issue with BlackBerry since I've been following them. How long ago did they tease the slider? How many months ago was it?
Back in March.
It's like half a year, right? Almost.
It was in March.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, they teased it half a year. By the time it comes out, they're going to have teased it so much. By the time it comes out, it's going to be so underwhelming that everybody's going to be like, why am I going to get this device now? Like, it's a device that you obviously had 6 months ago, and you're just bringing it out now. That might not be the case. That's probably not the case, but that's how people are going to think about it, right? And so they just need to really focus on getting that one device out. And if John Chen, his comments are true, and he wants to focus on that one device, he's really got to hammer that one device out.
Yeah.
Get it out in a timely fashion, and get it out while the hype is there. Because I know when they first announced it, my hype level was like up here about the slider. Now I'm kind of like, they got to release it. Yeah.
You know, maybe
they're habit of doing that though. Like they've done that for years, and that, as much as we say BlackBerry is changing, it seems like that's one of the things that hasn't changed. Is when they actually tease devices, the time frame from when they tease devices to when they actually launch it. Because I mean, even the BlackBerry Classic was announced almost like a year before it actually even showed up. So
yeah.
I feel like they're being pressured into like, you need to show us something, and they're kind of maybe getting excited or something, or trying to tell people to hold off or like relax, we'll be there. But like from when they showed off the slider, I think it was very obvious that it was like very, very, very like alpha stages. Like the OS on it may have been a screenshot, and like
I don't even think what they showed off was real.
Yeah, so
it was a duct tape playbook.
Yeah, which seems a little bit bizarre that they even showed it off. Like, was it Chen just like, we're going to show something? Like, I feel like Chen has definitely changed even since then. Like, he was trying to bring hype in some way, shape, or form, but like the past few months, he's been like silent, and he's been like, he's just so much different than he was even at the beginning of the year. And I wonder if it's them trying to figure out what's going on here, or was their plan all along. But I just think that things are changing, and maybe they're just trying to, be careful with the stock and with all these Android rumors / whatever's going on with Android. I think they're just trying to play it careful, and they've actually changed the plan a little bit from the beginning of the year. But I don't know.
DJ, where do you stand on a slider device? Is that something you're interested in?
Yes. Yes. When I saw it, Look, see, the Torch device was my favorite legacy device, and I definitely would like to get my hands on the slider. I like that form factor.
Will you buy it or get it if it runs Android?
I probably still will. Whether it becomes my daily driver, then I don't know if it runs Android. It depends how, what the outcome is and how they do that. But I want the device, yes. But I'd rather it be BlackBerry 10 than Android on there.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you. Alex
that's-
wants an Android device so
No,
bad.
what?
He
Whoa,
needs-
whoa, 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 whoa!
Hold on.
You're in a Snapchat.
No.
Throw Alex under the bus there.
Jeez. I'm actually kind of curious because I guess the big question is, say compare this slider to just every other Android phone and the iPhone. So like forget BlackBerry 10 exists for a second. Would this slider device be interesting enough for you to go for it as an Android device compared to other Android devices? I think if they get the specs right, then like you can finally get like a full touch device and a solid keyboard going. I think even if I was a full like Android user, always using Android, never gave a crap about BlackBerry, I think that device would be interesting to me if, maybe say that it was legacy a while back and I used the keyboard on the old curves and everything. I think this might be an interesting device, even if it was just like a straight Android, competitor kind of thing. But I don't think it's going to be just that.
We discussed it before. Like, there's plenty of Android users out there who wish to return back to the keyboard, and the slider will bring back the keyboard, right? It's just that they don't want anything else that has to come with BlackBerry. They just don't want any of it. They just want the regular stuff.
Well, they want
They
the
want
hub.
that BlackBerry keyboard.
I think that's just you, Alex. You're the only one who wants the hub on Android.
Dude, everyone wants the hub. Are you kidding me?
On Android?
If
Yeah.
I
BlackBerry,
prefer the BB10 hub, man.
Well,
BlackBerry
obviously.
went Android, I would probably, that's it. Like if BlackBerry went Android, what option would there be? It'd just be iOS and Android, or I could always go to Tizen or Firefox.
Stop
Or,
with the Tizen and Firefox.
You ain't going to no Tizen or
yeah, no, but
Firefox.
honestly, yeah. If BlackBerry went Android, I'd almost have no choice but to
Yeah.
go Android, because right now half of the apps I use are unfortunately Android applications. And so I would assume I'm probably more familiar with how to use Android apps at this point than I would be going back to using iOS apps like I used them 6 years ago. So just I think for most people, if BlackBerry did switch, most people would probably have to deal with it, and I don't think you'd see too many people go over to iOS personally.
See, for me, what the stopgap that gets me is for BlackBerry to go Android doesn't mean they have to not go BlackBerry 10, right?
Yeah.
We don't know if there's going to be a specific device that runs Android, or maybe the whole fleet of devices goes Android. But I still think if they slowly develop BB10, as they have been, right? The OS updates have been very slow the last 6 months. But they're very slow, incremental, focusing on enterprise, focusing on security and productivity, collaboration. And then you have a consumer option as well. You kind of can play to both sides, because there's still some values on BB10, I think.
The issue I found with that, James, is that's a perfectly valid point. But for someone like me, for instance, as a consumer, if BB10 starts becoming strictly an enterprise option and Android is going to be a consumer option, to me, I'm personally not really going to care that much about BlackBerry 10, because it's just not going to be the avenue I'm going to be
And that's okay,
approaching,
Brandon.
and that's perfectly
And
fine.
that's okay.
I just think for a lot of people that are currently using BlackBerry 10, that's going to be disappointing for them.
But do you think
Regardless, even if BlackBerry 10 does still survive and does still have a future in the enterprise space, it's still going to be disappointing to a lot of people that love it and use it now.
But do you think they can eventually get to a point where Android is running decently on BlackBerry 10, like this runtime? Can they maybe 2 years down the line, if they kind of took BB10 out of the limelight for a bit and just used it in enterprise where they had to, could they eventually get it to a level where they could then reintroduce it into the consumer market, but it actually be running Android apps nicely through the runtime, but still be BlackBerry 10? Like, can they just shelf it, work on it in the private for a bit, and then reintroduce it a couple years back? I mean, what's the difference between that and these other companies just having these launchers and their other tweaks to Android?
It's such a viable opportunity for them to put BB10 on the back burner, and then again let it mature, build out the feature set. But I think it's going to feed back, right? You build an Android device, you get people looking at your products in a different way,
Yeah.
and then BB10 is still an option.
They'll be
And
more receptive to it.
Brandon's point is accurate, where a lot of the consumer interest, if you're that kind of user, for you, you're going to default over to the Android version, right? But I see people all the time in news media and in corporate communications who have two devices. They have an
Yep.
iPhone for personal, and then they have their BlackBerry for communication. I think a slider may belay that duality, right? It may finally give people that one device that they can use for everything because they can get on Snapchat or whatever else. And
I'm
still
just wondering what BlackBerry announcing an Android device would actually do to BlackBerry 10 sales, like in the direct aftermath. Like, how many people would go out and start hoarding BlackBerry 10 devices? Like,
Nobody.
all those people that were waiting, like, for the passport to lower, go to a lower price. Would those people who love BlackBerry 10 go out and just like
No.
buy the passport at that point?
I
No,
think
they could
Buy the
just,
leaps, buy the boxes, you know?
they could just go on Craigslist and start getting devices for dirt cheap because it's an extinct platform at that
yeah,
point.
if they
And then-
well, yeah, if they cease to update it, then do you really want that necessarily? Like, I mean, sure, if they keep updating in the background, but if it's not as much of a focus, they probably won't be doing as many consumer updates to it. So, do you really want a phone that's not going to be updated for months at a time? So it's like one part of me is like, yeah, legacy, buy a bunch of legacy devices because it doesn't exist anymore. But then it's like, well, the OS isn't being updated anymore. Do you really want a phone that's not updated? It starts getting vulnerable to, I don't know. It's a trade-off.
People only care about that for like a year or two.
yeah,
That's,
I
you know,
mean,
you're going to switch to another device in a year or two anyways, right?
yeah, that's why I think it's going to work, because by the time they introduce devices like the Classic 2 or maybe even a Passport 2, again, BB10 is going to have a more mature offering, and maybe it's an Android one, right? And that Google is the one updating it, but I do think they're going to be able to slowly and surely keep developing BB10. I think there is an enterprise need for it still. There's things you can accomplish on BB10 from a productivity and security perspective that you can get close on Android, but it's never going to be the same. And again, if you're that diehard corporate user, I think the sector for which you use a BlackBerry 10 device is going to be imperative, because governments don't necessarily want people like you and I running around with a BlackBerry 10 device, right? They probably prefer us on an Android or iPhone type device. So again, there may be more of a separation as time comes between a device for enterprise and corporate, a BlackBerry device for enterprise and corporate, and a BlackBerry device for consumer and everybody else, even if you're in a business, right? Because you still have Bez and all the other additives on the security layers on the back end there. But
You know, Chen brought that up during one of the interviews with the news station, where he kind of said, you know, it's kind of conflicting because we say that we focus on enterprise, but you know, the people working in enterprise are consumers too. So as much as we say we're creating an enterprise device, well, then that becomes the problem. You're going to have two devices. You're going to have a BlackBerry and an iPhone. You can't necessarily just say we're just an enterprise device, because enterprise people are consumers. So like, at least they understand that it's problematic in a way. I mean, he said it came straight from his mouth. So
Like, it's just confusing because you got another brand that's really well known for their enterprise use would be Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard is used in a lot of companies in enterprise space, but they're also used in the consumer space. And it's like, you know, they could strike that balance. They could focus on enterprise, but and not shut out the consumer space. And I think that's what John Chen is kind of alluding to, is that maybe they shouldn't be locking out that consumer space. But right now, I think it's a little confusing for someone looking from the outside in on BlackBerry. They don't know what to make of it. They don't know whether they should get a BlackBerry 10 device, because everybody's talking about a potential BlackBerry Android device. And it's just a really confusing time to be a BlackBerry fan. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I'm confused personally. I don't know what they're gonna do going forward.
I think part of that comes from the messages that John Chen is putting out there, because, I mean, I don't think anybody here could realistically say that John Chen has a direct 100% clear message. Like, it just seems like there's tons of stuff that he keeps putting out there, but it doesn't seem like any one of those messages is actually clear as to what the direction is in terms of BlackBerry, because, like Brandon said, we have these Android rumors, we have the security focus. All of a sudden, BlackBerry is going to stop making devices or drop down to 1 or 2 devices. It's all, I don't know. It's all very confusing in terms of what messages are actually being delivered. And I wish they would just come out and directly say, like, one way or another, like, yes, we're going to 100% dedicate everything to software and enterprise, and we're leaving consumers behind, or whatever the case may be. I just wish they would clarify that message 100%, because, like Brendan said, as a BlackBerry fan and a BlackBerry user, it's all very confusing. I can't, and each and every one of us here are individuals who follow BlackBerry news very carefully. So if we're sort of confused in terms of the messaging, what does that mean for people who aren't following BlackBerry news on a constant basis, and are on the outside looking in? I don't think the current strategy, so to speak, is helping clarify their message in any sort of way. It just seems kind of random. I mean, obviously there is a strategy. John Chen was put in place for that exact reason. He's very good with the strategies, but I think he just sort of, he kind of needs to get his shit together and get the message clear. It's still very confusing.
You heard it here, guys. Right from BlackBerry's editor-in-chief. John Chen, come on. Get
Seriously, yeah.
Hey, another thing that's kind of worrisome, that's going to be coming up soon, is that John Chen, he's been quoted saying that BlackBerry is going to be profitable by fiscal 2016, and so if he doesn't produce those numbers this year, it's the stock's going to get hammered. I mean, you can't.
The stock's already getting hammered, dude.
Well, it's going to be hammered even more. Like, it's still 100% higher than its lowest it was last year. So I mean, like, I don't know.
From a strategy perspective, it makes sense to build your service revenue back, because your device sales are declining, and that's where your service revenue was. If they build $500 million a year worth of software revenue, then they can focus on the more devices and focus back in that arena again. But right now, like you said, Brandon, he's got to hit that deadline. He's got to hit that mark, and he needs to make BlackBerry profitable by doing something they have not done before. They have to go back to it and get it together. So
yeah.
I still think, BlackBerry 10 is great. There's an opportunity for them to run Android better on BlackBerry 10 and maybe satiate some of our needs, right? Maybe there's a top-level agreement with Google or something that it takes over and we get what we need one way or another, right? Because ultimately we just need better performance on Android and services. And I think John Chen could find a way to get to Google and make that happen.
Yeah, look, I'm on the latest BlackBerry 10.3 OS, beta OS. And like sometimes Instagram, like I don't know, it's like 2 out of 3 times I get an Instagram notification in my hub, but it's not like 100% of the time. Yeah. So like things like that, James, they could do things like that better integrate. And I know we've talked about this in the past ad nauseum, but better integration in terms of notifications with Android apps and maybe headless functionality for Android apps on BlackBerry 10 could be a good way to get a lot of people happy and use some of those apps more effectively.
DJ, what device are you currently using now? Are you using a Classic?
Yeah, I'm currently using the Classic. I've been using it for about a month already, because I got a white one, so that's what I'm using.
So fancy, so fancy.
I don't even have a white Classic. What the hell? I don't even have a blue one yet.
DJ, on your Classic, do you use more BlackBerry 10 native, or do you have like a substantial number of Android apps that you run on it as well?
No, mostly it's native apps. There's only a few Android apps that I use. If there's a native version, I'll use it. Just a few Android apps on mine.
It's good, keeping it holistic. I like that. Whereas Brandon and Alex's devices are just all Android apps.
Yeah.
No, I just install the Android apps I need.
I use a few. I use like maybe 3 or 4 Android apps. I'll name them out right here. Like I use Spotify, Fitbit, and Instagram, straight flexing. So that's 3 that I use that are Android. Oh, and Nike Plus running. I use it just because I was using it like way back when, and I hate like having to switch my running app. and it works quite well. But for the majority, I use native apps. They're a lot better and a lot cleaner. Like, for instance, my go-to app every day that I always look at is, of course, the BlackBerry and BerryFlow apps, which are beautifully done in native. But in terms of other social networking, Reddit in Motion is a pretty top-notch native app that I use daily.
It's so funny because I feel like if like the term BlackBerry balance and like they're using it in this way that no one has really touched it unless you're actually on Bez. But I feel like if they somehow utilize that to be like Android section and BlackBerry section, BlackBerry is for work and Android is for consumer. Like you can have two devices on one phone, kind of, and I think it would be
Hypervisor,
pretty cool.
but can they legally pull it off? That'll be the question that comes next. I appreciate having all of you guys' input on this particular upstream. I think it was nice to kind of come back from an awesome security summit where they leveraged again that they are a leading class in this market. There is no one who knows security as well and as long as BlackBerry, and that pedigree is something they obviously want to continue pushing forward. So I, again, appreciate having you all on to talk about the acquisition and some of the latest news. DJ, it was great having you on. Thank you for staying up so late with us. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Take care, guys.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy.
Later.
Bye.